Hi everyone, welcome back. For this next video, you're going to want to have your purple and yellow book handy. We're going to go through both of them. So to start, I want you to grab your purple book and you're going to want to turn to handout 4.1.10. So it looks like a puzzle and it's called Your Child as a Puzzle. So your children are made up of different parts. When we understand these parts of our children, we gain special insight into our children's uniqueness and ways in which we can parent them to honor that uniqueness. So some of who he or she is comes from the following: their developmental stage, their temperament, their learning languages, these are their talents and interests, their love language, their experiences he or she had. So that's nurture and structure, the family system, and physical and mental health. Now, we haven't gone over all of these yet, and so it's okay because this is going to be an assignment that we continue to work on throughout our time together. And then at the end of week 12 is when it will be completely finished. So you should have your purple book open to a page like this. And I filled this out for my kiddo, and we're gonna pretend like my kiddo is in stage 3. She's a preschooler. And so I'm going to look at the different puzzle pieces and figure out which ones we've gone over and which ones I can give answers to. So sometimes when people fill this out, they ask if they should put the answer in the actual puzzle piece or if they should do it in the one next to it or the one below it. I'm not picky. I think that wherever you think it makes sense to put it is just fine. I chose this piece right here. And so I put Stella stage 3 because again, she's a preschooler. But you could choose to put yours somewhere else. Maybe I have multiple kids and maybe I'm going to put my multiple kids on this one sheet. Maybe I'm going to use a different pen color to distinguish them, or maybe I'll have all of one child's here and another child's here. I'm not going to control how you choose to fill out this paper. So another one was learning languages. So this is talents and interests. My little preschooler, she loves to learn through play. That's a really important learning language for her. I could also add in some other things here, like she really loves My Little Pony, and Doc McStuffins is a really, really special interest for her. We're going to go through temperament on week 7, so we're not there yet. We're going to go through love languages during week 5 next week, also week 7, so we're also not there. We have covered some nurture already, and so some of the nurturing that I give to her is we read together. I use emotion coaching. We share the I feel statements and identify our feelings, and then we also play together. Structure received is something that we'll continue to work on through our time together. I could probably put some stuff in here, but I just thought I'd wait. Child's health. I do know some things I could put in here, even though we haven't covered it yet, but I'm just choosing to wait. You may not choose that. And then family culture and traditions, we're going to cover that during week 5. And so we'll be able to fill that out then. So go ahead and fill out what you're able to on this. Again, it's not due today. You won't have to send it to me, but we'll just continue to work on it throughout our time together. If you're not done, please pause the video and finish up before we move on. So next we're going to go into brain development. You're going to want to grab your yellow book and you're going to want to turn to worksheet 4.2.2, and it's called Critical Periods of Brain Development. So let's go through this worksheet. human brain development begins during the first few weeks after conception and continues throughout life. So that brain is already developing even in that first trimester of pregnancy. So what happens? Development in seeing and hearing, that's pre-birth through age 5 years. There's a sensitive period, major advances during that first year. Development of understanding language and speaking, that is pre-birth through age 5 years. So again, when the baby is still in vitro, before we've even given birth, they are already starting to develop an understanding of language and speaking. Many of us have maybe heard of or done ourselves of a pregnant mommy putting certain songs up to her stomach for the baby to hear. And then when that baby is born, it's soothing to that child. And also hearing the mother's heartbeat when we're doing that skin to skin, because they've listened to that while they were in vitro. These are all examples of how that language and speaking is starting to develop even at the beginning. They are working on development of reasoning, problem solving, self-regulation, and personality. This is pre-birth through age 15 years. So some of our personality traits, we believe, are just kind of innate, and we are just kind of born with some specific likenesses and dislikenesses, or specific preferences, I guess I should say, that just kind of come natural to us. Another sensitive period up to the end of the elementary school age years. So around those ages of 9 through 11 is hugely, hugely important to how we're going to move forward with our reasoning, problem solving, self-regulation, and personality. And many of us maybe have a child that's around 7 to 12 years old and can notice them being very focused on right and wrong and following rules, and especially if someone else is not following rules. And so this is one of those examples of how they're developing these areas. What you can do, you can give your child attention, sing to, play with, read to, nurture from birth onward. Some other things that we need to keep in mind is we need to protect our child from biological hazards. We need to protect our child from hazards is particularly important from conception throughout the first few years. We can't expect our child to protect themselves, especially when they are just those little tiny humans that are geared towards exploring and uncovering and tasting and trying and smelling everything. We need to ensure adequate health care and nutrition for ourselves during pregnancy and when we're nursing. Avoid high and chronic stress during pregnancy. Get adequate health care and nutrition for your child after birth. Avoid exposing our child to environmental toxins such as lead and mercury. Avoid exposing our child to drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. And protect our child from viruses like HIV and rubella. Parents can facilitate the development and protect the health of their child's brains from conception through adulthood. So there are things we can do that are going to help our child's brain develop. So just like growing up happens in stages, brain development also happens in stages. So we have these different areas of brain development. I am a little nervous to try to pronounce them out loud. So maybe I'll refer to them by color instead, because I don't feel confident in my ability to pronounce them out loud. So we can see here that this red area, that is developing from birth to 6 years. And some ways that we can help in that development is we can talk and sing and read and listen and respond to our child, and especially saying and reading and singing the same things over and over and over again I'm sure many of us have read the same book with our little preschooler what feels like 500 times, and they may very well know exactly what's happening and may even get they may have a lot of fun telling you about how what's going to happen on that next page, and they do this every night every time you do read it. Although it can become really boring for us, it's so important for our child to learn that cause and effect. And so this is how they are building that trust in their understanding of what cause and effect is. So another one is the visual processing. So this is that gray area, and this is developing from birth to 2 years. We want to give them lots of interesting things to look at. Play where I follow with my eyes. We often see like mobiles and lots of pretty colors and designs in baby nurseries, and all of this is going to help with that. Also, when we are out on a walk or when we're at a store, when we're driving, to narrate the things we're seeing and to engage them in what it is they're looking at. The purple area, that balance and coordination. This is birth to 1 year. So let me move, take me to playground, swimming, dance with me, let me wiggle, roll, and jump. Let me take risks while I learn to move. All of this is very important. So brainstem, this is developed at birth. So this helps me feel emotionally and physically safe. If I am frightened or stressed, my brain goes into survival mode and the rest of my brain can't function or grow. When I feel safe, I can learn. So we have that breathing, heart rate, and temperature, which is, the natural things that we do without thinking about it. But it's really important that we really take note of this factoid that we read in this green box. That's that again, if I am frightened or stressed, my brain goes into survival mode and the rest of my brain can't function or grow. So it's important that we understand that it has to do with our personal perception, or the baby or child's personal perception of whether or not they feel safe or don't feel safe. It's very easy for me as an adult to look at a situation that my child is experiencing and for me to be able to say, oh, they're safe, it shouldn't matter. However, it matters to the child's perception. So even if they aren't in danger, but they perceive themselves to be in danger, they are fearful of being in danger, that is enough that's going to trigger this fight or flight mode or this survival mode, and they will no longer be able to learn. So next is that orange. And so this is hearing, learning, and emotions. So this is birth to 6 years. And then so the lobe is birth to 6 years, and the limbic system is 8 months to 2 years. So it's really important that we're consistent, we show unconditional love, we experience joy together, and we talk about emotions. And then this blue part, that's that prefrontal lobe and prefrontal cortex. So that's thought, memory, and behavior. So developing in childhood, this is their concrete thinking. So having them sort and categorize objects is going to help with this. Encourage problem solving will help. Let me be frustrated sometimes as I figure things out, and help me notice patterns. Then we have that prefrontal cortex. So this gives me choices when I am calm. Talk to me about plans, help me break down big tasks into little steps. So that prefrontal cortex, I remember when I first entered college, being told that it develops until we're about 18. So this is our decision making and our consequences and how the choice I make today will impact me tomorrow or 5 years from now. That is still developing. And when I was in college, I remember first being told, I think it was 18, and then that's developed. And I feel like every 2 or 3 years, it gets extended out how long this part of the brain is growing. And so on this infographic, it says to 22 years. I feel like the last time I heard an update on it, it was either 25 to 27 years, that part of the brain is still growing, that we are still figuring out the consequences of our actions and our decision-making processes. It's also important to note that it's going to happen, it'll be done developing at that 25 or 27 year mark only if we are going through our developmental tasks on time. So if I spend a lot of time or have spent a lot of time prior to this developing, being in this mode of frightened or stressed, and my brain has gone into survival mode, remember how we can't learn during that time, and that the other parts of our brain can't function and grow during that time. So when that happens, and there's a delay to the development of my prefrontal cortex, it will likely not be fully developed at 25 or 27. So these different milestones are supposed to happen around these certain ages. However, it's not as if on your birthday you're given a present of your prefrontal cortex being fully developed. So that's something that we need to remember, that if we were delayed in the growth of another area or for a period of time, it's going to delay how long it takes me to finish developing here. So I want you to turn in your yellow book to page 4.2.3, and it's called Stress and the Developing Brain. And we're going to break down these 3 different types of stress. So on that first page, it first defines positive stress. So this is stress that is brief and mild to moderate in intensity. For example, a child experiencing frustration with a new toy or getting a shot at the doctor's office or the first day at a new childcare. This kind of stress is normal and is important for helping children gradually learn how to manage their emotions in difficult situations. For young children, stress is positive and when they have a caring adult who supports them in managing the stress. So then it asks me to write an example of positive stress event for my child. So one that I wrote was practicing patience while waiting in line. This is stressful. It's not ideal. It's not something we love doing, but it is an example of some positive stress. It's a great time for us to learn some skills that we'll have to employ the rest of our lives. So our next bullet is toxic stress. So toxic stress happens when children experience chronic and severe stress, such as physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, chronic neglect, caregiver substance use or mental illness, or exposure to violence in the home or neighborhood, without caring and support from an adult. In toxic stress, the body's stress response is always activated, damaging the development of the child's brain and other organs. Such toxic stress can impact children's cognitive development, causing difficulties in school. It can also lead to the problem with impulse control and emotion regulation, which can lead to behavioral problems. Toxic stress can also contribute to later health problems, including heart disease, diabetes, and substance abuse and depression. So something that I think is really noteworthy is this sentence of, in toxic stress, the body's stress response is always activated. So these are examples of things that cause toxic stress. However, they aren't the only things that create toxic stress. Toxic stress is anything that activates that fight or flight mode, that survival mode. It's really interesting because the human brain is such a wonder, and it's really miraculous that we have developed that adrenaline that comes up when toxic stress happens and pushes our brain into fight or flight mode. That is what has caused every ancestor before me to exist, and ultimately me existing, as they were able to activate that stress, that fight or flight survival mode when it was needed, and it helped them to survive into being old enough to become parents themselves. So it's very helpful in saving our lives. However, nothing else in our brain can work when it is activated. What the amount of time that adrenaline is supposed to exist in order to get us out of that stressful situation is 8 minutes. So I feel toxic stress. I feel in fear of my life. I'm in survival mode. I'm supposed to get this surge of adrenaline that just is able to sustain me and give me the energy or whatever it is that I need to get into a safe place. And then in 8 minutes, it's supposed to go away, and I'm supposed to then I need to deal with the after effects of that. However, if I am always experiencing that, if I'm experiencing that every day or every week, it is going to stunt me so monumentally. My brain has not developed enough to know how to handle it on my own. Again, it's important that we recognize that it's not just if the adult deems the child to be in fight or flight mode or survival mode. It's up to the child to deem it. Maybe I know that my child is not in danger, but if they perceive themselves to be in danger, that's going to activate that survival mode. And so their perception is what matters. And that's why it's so important that we grow that bond, and we practice the emotion coaching. If we disregard our children's emotions, if we don't teach them those skills, there is no way they can communicate it, and there is no way for us to respond to it. So one example of toxic stress for my child could be child witnesses physical and verbal fighting. Maybe me and the child's other parent have a really bad relationship, and we fight and yell and scream and throw things and break things and threaten or call names, and my child hears this all the time. Maybe I, as the adult, know that I would never yell those things at my child, that I would never hurt my child, that I would never throw the things that I'm throwing at my child. I know that I wouldn't do that. However, it does not matter if I know that in terms of how toxic stress impacts the child. If the child perceives themselves to be in danger, it is going to trigger that survival mode, and their brain is going to go into survival mode, and it's going to delay all the other processes. So then we have tolerable stress. So this is a more severe stress that is not a normal part of everyday life. Things like separation from a loved one through divorce, death, or incarceration, a natural disaster, a serious accident or illness. This type of stress is made tolerable for the child by having a caring adult who supports them and helps them manage the stress. This support allows the child's brain and body to recover quickly from the effect of the stress response. So many of these examples could be toxic stress, If I don't have the support of an adult that can help me manage it, then it's going to turn toxic. So if I have that bond and that trust and that support from an adult, that's going to help me move stresses from toxic into tolerable. So one example of this could be parent separation. So we cover a lot of different PIO skills, or a lot of different skills in PIO that help us manage, help our children manage stress. So some of these are effective listening skills, connecting through letters and calls, using emotion coaching, showing your love using your child's love language, using a backbone parenting style, providing structure through family routine, using encouragements, and practicing emotion regulation yourself and using it in your relationships with your children and their caregivers. So over here, we are going to turn to the page 2 of 2 of the same worksheet, and we're going to answer some questions. So my plan for helping my child manage stress. Again, this is an example that I wrote. You can write mine if it's true for you. If it's not true for you, please unpack one of the ones that you had written down on the previous page. If you're feeling stuck and don't know where to go forward, this is something that you can reach out to your parent coach to discuss. So instructions for the tolerable or toxic stress examples you listed above, complete the following plan. So I chose one of my toxic stress. So what is the stressor? Child witness verbal and physical fighting. And then it asks, is there a way to eliminate or reduce the stress? So parents taking action to eliminate this occurrence. This could be separation. This could be seeking help. And then I asked if there's any other ideas, because if we were in class, I would encourage a brainstorm here. Number 3 says, if not, what will you do to help your child manage that stressor? Even after the occurrence ends, the stress child has experienced is still there. So maybe we did separate, maybe we did seek help, but that's not enough. There's still some cleaning up that we're going to have to do. Child still needs help. This could be counseling for parents and child. This could be positive relationships. This could be parents seeking help through parent education, domestic violence classes. Parents need to learn about and employ accountability. They need to teach new skills. And then they also need to support relationships with positive adults for that child, because again, that positive adult relationship is going to be what moves our toxic stress to tolerable. And then finally, whose help do you need to help my child manage this stressor? Well, I probably need the help of other family members or other caregivers in my child's life. I probably need some professional supports. I could employ the help of my faith leaders if that is something that I practice in my family. And then I wrote etc. because again, if we were in class, I would employ a brainstorm here. So continuing in your yellow workbook, we have 4.2.4, and this is about shaken baby syndrome. I want you to go ahead and read this to yourself, maybe highlight or make note of noteworthy information, maybe things you learned that are new or didn't know about, or maybe even you have some comments that you want to add to this. So please pause the video and do that. And then again, we have more on the preventing shaken baby syndrome, 2 more pages. That's 4.2.5. I want you to again go through this and find some information on here that is relevant to you. So finally, I want us to turn in our yellow book to page 4.2.7, Stimulating Brain Development. So this is a 3-page spread that's in your yellow book, and it breaks up, broken up into different categories. So there's vision, There's language, there's gross motor, so these are like big movements like running and jumping. There's fine motor, so these are small movements like with my hands, crocheting, turning a screwdriver. Emotional attachments, emotional control, logic and math, and impulse control and decision making. So these are the different categories of brain development and the different ways, all of the different ways that we need to put consideration into developing and encouraging and improving, helping our children to improve their brain development. So you can go through and read some ideas from each of these. Go ahead and pause the video, highlight a couple that you like of each. Maybe you're doing some of these or a lot of these. Maybe you are doing a lot in the emotional attachment, but not much in the emotional control. Go ahead and take a few minutes, pause the video, and identify some that you like. Then I want you to turn to the purple book, and I want you to open it up to handout 4.2.3 Brain Development Plan, and it looks like this. So I want you to write your child's name and their age. So if you have multiple children, maybe you put a line down the middle and you fill it out for 2 different kids, or more than 2 different kids. So for this one, I said that Stella is now 10 years old. And I gave some ideas in each of these. Now, something I want you to know is that the categories on this brain development plan, vision, gross motor, fine motor, language, these are the same categories that are in the yellow book that we just looked at and you just highlighted. So if any of these boxes that we fill out, you get stuck, you can turn to those pages in your yellow book and get some ideas from there. So for vision, on that one, it had shown things that were mostly for babies. And so that vision is developing in babyhood. However, I do want to continue to endorse or encourage proper vision safety and eye health. So 2 things I wrote were safety goggles during high-risk activities or chores. Chopping wood is something that's very relevant in my life, and anybody that is familiar with chopping wood knows that you need to wear some safety goggles when you do that. Another thing that I can do to endorse that good vision is access to the eye doctor. So gross motor, these are big movements. Some things that I can do with Stella to encourage that gross motor is dancing, biking, and swimming. Some things I can do to encourage fine motor is painting, beading, and clay. Some things I can do to encourage language is reading out loud and discussing the book, talking about the music we listen to and how it makes us feel. Some things I can do to encourage logic and math. I can give Stella chores and she can earn an allowance. And with that allowance money, she can save up for and buy things she wants. This is going to help to encourage that logic and math. I could also have her be part of that grocery budgeting. Maybe I say to her, okay, we have $10 this week to spend on fruit. What types of fruits do we want to get? And maybe her absolute favorite fruit is dragon fruit, and maybe she jumps to that. I don't know about you, but where I live, dragon fruit would maybe eat up that whole $10 for 1 or 2 of them. And so that may be an opportunity to say, oh, I love dragon fruit too. Let's look at the cost, and let's think about how many times we want to be able to eat fruit this week for $10 and how many times we'll be able to if we spend it all on just 2 pieces of fruit, and can help give some different ideas as well. Emotional attachment. talking about the feelings we experience and notice in others. And what I mean by this noticing in others, I use books and movies and rehashing situations that we witnessed. And I just have them practice by saying, gosh, how do you think they feel? Why do you think they feel that way? Does their face tell you that? How might you have felt if you were in that situation? All of these things are going to help grow that empathy and that emotional attachment. Another thing I'm going to continue to do is I'm going to continue to give warm physical and verbal affections. My 10-year-old still needs that, even though they're not a baby anymore. And then for emotional control, impulse control, and decision making, here's some things I can do to help facilitate that. I can provide a safe, secure, stable environment that is predictable. I can know my child's friends and their parents, and I can explain the reasons for my rules. All of these things are going to help to build that impulse control, that decision making, and that emotional control. If I say that the rules are the rules because I'm the boss, that's not helping my child to learn why the rules are that way, why they exist. If I don't ever give that context and I say it's just because I'm the boss, then they're probably not going to have a whole lot of incentive to try to follow them when I'm not watching. So if you have questions on this, if you're feeling stuck, if you don't know how to fill it out, maybe for your teenager or for even any age of your children, please connect with your parenting coach about that. Okay, and so that takes us to the end of our class this week. It has been really great being with you at the end of this week. We are 1/3 of the way through. That's 33%. I'm so excited because our class is moving right along, and we are going to be at that halfway mark just in 2 weeks. And before we know it, we'll all be graduates. So thank you for joining us this week. I hope to see you on our Thursday night Zoom meeting. Take care.